Hello one and all, how is it hanging? It is I, your Rat Daddy, and today we are yet again back in the RimWorld Continental Army series, my babies. Now look, in today's episode I'm starting out hot and heavy. We actually have a caravan with Kenzaki and a few horses who is going to go and buy some resources. Said resources are actually chem fuel, and we need chem fuel for a new weapon that we're cooking up in today's episode. After arriving at the nearby Prussian settlement, we quickly grabbed the chem fuel, and we would also end up purchasing one of their slaves who would actually join us as a colonist. Because realistically, we need all the manpower we can get, we also bought President Henry a nice telescope, but I forgot to show it. Then Kenzaki and the new colonists began making their way back home. As they were on their way back home, we ended up having a group of sheep join us here very randomly, and I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't too excited about having new mouths to feed. So I made the executive decision to slaughter every single sheep that had joined us, and then we would cut them up and eat them. Ah, the circle of life. Ain't nature just grand? Kenzaki then finally returned back home with our brand new stash of chem fuel for our brand new prototype weapons, and better yet, she also returned with our new colonist. Now, as for the new weapons, it has been requested for quite a while that we actually create something of a demolition group, so what we're going to be creating are called Ketchum grenades, basically an early proto form of grenade. Really, the only problem with this, we have plenty of resources, we can always buy more chem fuel if we need to make these grenades, but the issue is we don't have enough soldiers to put into this demolition group, so unfortunately to begin with, we're only doing 3. Of course, 3 is not a lot by any means, but it is a start to the new group. And finally, after some time, we had all of our grenades completed, as well as our new helmets and backpacks for our demolition soldiers. I also ended up giving them each a revolver pistol, which is slightly more advanced than the flintlock pistols that the other soldiers have been using. I sent the 3 of them out on a practice mission, if you will, to just kind of throw a few grenades at some stones and maybe fire their pistols, and honestly, I was fairly pleased with the results. Unfortunately, it seems the blast radius of the grenades is extremely small, but that's okay since most factions don't really even have grenades yet. And now, of course, comes the part that everyone loves. I have decided to give these 3 names chosen from your guys' comments. Now, I did choose these names randomly, basically just whichever ones caught my eye. Most of them, I believe, have been commented quite a few times, but of course that isn't what I'm going based on. I'm just randomly choosing them, so if you're a new commenter or whatnot with some names, continue doing that because I will eventually see it and maybe it catches my eye. Now basically immediately after creating these demolition soldiers, I have decided to send them as well as a new slave named Miksu over to New Marseille to kind of reinforce them since they've been getting attacked a lot lately. The hope, of course, being that they'll be able to help New Marseille defend themselves, but also this could be a play by President Henry to try and help reinforce Beardy's claim as governor. Having a few new loyalist soldiers be sent to New Marseille, bringing with them assault rifles, the same type of assault rifles that were given to its citizens last episode, could be a ploy by the president to try and gain favor with the people as well. However, I will say, though these new assault rifles are helping New Marseille defend themselves, they did end up giving us a bit of a scare, for you see, New Marseille, out of the 2 cities, is the one with the most amount of slaves. Since their population is so low, we've been sending so many slaves over here to try and help reinforce. Which means, of course, a few of these slaves are already armed and well seasoned in combat as they've been with us for quite a while. Quite a while meaning that they've had a good bit of time to plan a slave rebellion. All 4 of the slaves of New Marseille have decided to rebel against the American Empire. We would immediately try to come in as fast as possible and squash the flames of rebellion, but they fought back fiercely. Thankfully, though, they weren't smart enough to grab the assault rifles on the ground, so they grabbed the outdated technology, giving them a disadvantage. We took down Cades by the monument and then began focusing our attention on the other 3 inside the warehouse. Miksu had already been down, then we took down Wood, and last but not least was Pants. Thankfully, though, as I mentioned, none of them picked up any of the assault rifles lying on the ground for whatever reason. If they had, this might have went very differently. And just like that, within a very short period of time, under Governor Beardy's reign, he has had his first Grand Slave Rebellion and also taken down his first Grand Slave Rebellion very easily. Hopefully, for the sake of the slaves, this is their last rebellion. This time we will be gracious and generous and not kill anyone. But next time, they might not be so lucky. As if this wasn't enough though, the very next morning we ended up having a faction assault. The Blue Gorge Union is apparently going to have a massive battle with the Prussians in our territory. And of course, as you can imagine, we are going to step in as soon as possible to try and help our Prussian allies, and also to take a chip out of that damn Blue Gorge Union for what they've done. Oh, that's right, we still haven't forgot the massive raid that tore through the walls of New Marseille and attacked our people viciously. Unfortunately, one of the French traders was riding a very large turtle and was attacked by the tribespeople as he was coming back. And though the battle is very imminent, of course, I thought it was very interesting that not only would we and the Prussians be fighting off the Blue Gorge Union, but the French are here as well. We are the triple threat dream team. Now, if only the British were here, we could stomp out these bastards easily. Unfortunately, the path that the Prussians were taking to do the battle was almost right through our base, so it would take a moment. We and the French would have to fend them off for the time being before they got here. Not that we minded smashing a few tribal heads, of course. Unfortunately, though, the French started getting absolutely wrecked by them. Thank God, though, the Prussian soldiers would arrive shortly thereafter to reinforce our ranks. And they were no strangers to combat. They would charge head first into the carnage of battle and begin taking them on mano a mano. Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of enemies and a lot of friendlies, but you get what I'm saying. They would use ample opportunities to take cover behind our defenses, working hand in hand with our American soldiers. But of course, make no mistake, even these seasoned soldiers, with our help as well as the French's, were still taking heavy losses on the battlefield. It looked like a sea of blood was running across every sandbag and bush. Finally, though, after fighting fiercely and suffering heavy losses themselves, the Blue Gorge Union finally decided to tuck tail and run away, leaving behind massive piles of bodies of their own. Of course, not all of these bodies were corpses. Some of them were still flailing from their wounds and would make great prisoners. With such a massive battle over with, and with it being the first battle where we and two of our allies have taken on a common enemy, I want to start naming these battles and maybe using the Days Matter mod to create some holidays. So for this one, what do you guys think the name should be of the battle, and we'll end up naming it. Now, back at Rats Valley, we finally ended up enslaving the disgusting bullfrog warrior known as Norris. This also marks the first time we've enslaved a bullfrog. And I must say, although ugly, hideous, and just horrible all around, his ability to spit acid from his mouth was quite interesting, and just as well his ability to summon bullfrogs at will. These two things would actually make him a very valuable asset, but don't tell him that, of course. We still hate him. That and the fact that he has a long jump ability that doesn't really seem to have much of a cooldown. I was a bit skeptical about enslaving him at first, but now I think he is the perfect weapon to use against the bullfrogs. Back once again at New Marseille, I began looking at our slave quarters and thought to myself, for the new slaves, if I were one of them, I would revolt as well. So we really need to try and give them better living conditions, and of course that's what we began working on, to try and beautify their place and honestly just give them some beds and basic necessities. Because of course the happier they are, the better for us, because that means the less likely they are to break and revolt. And since we're recruiting more prisoners into our ranks, I decided that we should probably go ahead and try to work on a few more barracks and residential areas for the upcoming soldiers. And just as well, of course, speaking of which, since we're taking so many prisoners, we don't want to run out of room. Right now, we barely have enough room to house them, honestly, so we decided to build a prison out of slate. This, of course, making it very hard to escape from, but also slate tile and whatnot is very beautiful, so it should keep the prisoners from having mental breaks themselves. Then, out of nowhere, we ended up having two brand new lovers. Burner flirted with Poyard, and it turns out the two of them became aroused or something, I don't know, but apparently they love each other. But then this got me thinking, we keep talking about trying to recruit more people, and I know it's going to take a very long time for children to grow up, but I decided to have them, as well as another couple of colonists who are in love, try to have some babies. And even if they're like 3 years old, we could probably slap a musket in their hands, tell them to get out there on the battlefield and die for Uncle Sam and their country. Yeah, I think that'll work. I think that's good. But before we wrap things up this episode, I want to go on the offensive a bit. I feel like we're always playing defense, so I'm going to send our cavalry units out to a Blue Gorge Union hunting site, and we're going to slaughter everyone and take all their work. Shortly after arriving, Kaiser Wilhelm realized that we were outnumbered. There were about 14 or 15 of them, and there were only about 9 of us. But, of course, we do have the upper hand because we have firearms, and we're also on horseback. So quick as lightning, Kaiser and his men began began trotting off into the hunting worksite. They were obviously immediately met with hostility, mostly because we started firing our weapons at them. But our motto is shoot shit up and then think about it later, so don't worry about it, baby. The tribespeople began grouping up and trying to chase us down. Luckily, none of them had any animals to mount, so it was hard for them to catch up with us, but their bows and pilas and things like that, some of them having some pretty good range on them, unfortunately, they did end up taking down one or two of our soldiers. Thankfully though, even with us being outnumbered and a few of our men going down during combat, eventually we had killed enough of them or downed enough of them that they began to run away from their very own hunting site. After which time, of course, we went in to investigate as our other soldiers began tending to our wounded. Unfortunately though, I am sad to say that we didn't find anything too interesting in the hunting work site, as you normally don't of course, but we did find a massive building full of animal corpses, leathers, pemmican, and things like that, which would be perfect to take back home to feed our people. I mean, let's be honest, we didn't exactly go out to the hunting worksite looking for food though, did we? We went out looking for a fight. And that's exactly what we found, unfortunately for the Blue Gorge Union, of course, at their own expense. Speaking of which, I suppose it's worth noting we took a few prisoners from the hunting worksite as well to try and help reinforce our ranks. But folks, as we wind down to the end of the episode here, I just want to thank you guys ever so much for watching today's episode. I've had a lot of fun with it. I do want to say I'm going to take probably maybe a 2 to 3 week break or something from this series, maybe work on another series or some other videos, maybe the 100 days videos, stuff like that. Of course, we will be coming back to this series though, no worries there. And of course, I want to ask you guys, how would you feel about us kind of just ramping up our technology in this series, like making a massive jump into electricity, tanks, stuff like that, some just wild and crazy shit, mechs, and maybe, who knows, right? Stuff like that, essentially. I don't want to say the series is getting boring for me. It's not. I'm still having a lot of fun and whatnot. I just don't want it to become dull for you guys, and I would like to play around with some stuff like that. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think about that, and I love you though, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.